They say desperation has a smell. Seraphine Rousseau learned that truth at 22, standing in the crumbling townhouse on Rue de la Paix in Lyon, watching her father pack the last of the silver into a leather valise with shaking hands. The smell was sour, like vinegar and old sweat, like fear that had fermented for months in the walls of a house that hadn't seen heat since November. Victor Rousseau didn't look at his daughter as he worked. He hadn't looked at her directly in 3 weeks, not since the night Seraphine had pressed her ear to his study door and heard him on the phone with a man whose voice sounded like gravel scraping over bone. "Yes," Victor had said that night. 22, female, functional. How much does it clear from the debt?" Seraphine had stood in that hallway, barefoot on freezing marble, and felt something inside her chest crystallize. Not break, crystallize, like water turning to ice, hard, clear, sharp enough to cut. She was merchandise. Now, standing in the doorway of that same study, she watched her father close the valise. His hands trembled so badly the buckles clinked like wind chimes. "Father," she said. He flinched, actually flinched. "The broker is coming at midnight," he said to the wall. "Pack light, 1 bag." Seraphine didn't move. Her left leg ached where it always ached, that dull throb from the knee down where the bones had never quite healed, right after she'd fallen down the back stairs at age 9. No money for a proper doctor. No money for anything but Victor's poker games and his debts to people who didn't forget. "Where am I going?" she asked. "Asset liquidation," Victor said. Still wouldn't look at her. "Zurich processing facility, then Vienna for placement." Placement. The word tasted like rust. "You're selling me to vampires." Victor's shoulders hunched. For a moment Seraphine thought he might turn around, might meet her eyes, might say he was sorry, or that he had no choice, or any of the comfortable lies people told themselves when they did monstrous things. Instead, he picked up the valise and walked past her. The smell of desperation followed him like a cloud. Seraphine stood alone in the study. The grandfather clock in the corner ticked. The sound echoed in the empty house like a countdown. She didn't cry. Crying was a waste of water, and she'd learned long ago that in a house with no heating, you conserved everything, even tears. She went upstairs, packed her threadbare wool coat, a change of clothes, the small knife she'd stolen from a kitchen drawer 6 months ago when she'd first heard the name Silas whispered in her father's nightmares. And she did something Victor would never expect. She went to his study, opened his laptop, found the email chain with the broker. Subject, asset number 404, Rousseau S. The messages were clinical. Height, weight, blood type, A positive, medical history, childhood injury, untreated, chronic anemia, estimated market value, low-grade domestic placement, $5,000 to $8,000. At the bottom of the chain, an attachment, facility protocols, Zurich processing. Seraphine read every word. By the time the doorbell rang at 12:03 a.m., she knew exactly what was going to happen to her. The broker was a ghoul named Silas. His skin looked like parchment paper stretched over a skull. His eyes were the color of old milk. He didn't manhandle her. Didn't need to. She walked to the black van parked at the curb with her head up and her small bag clutched in one hand. "Cooperative," Silas noted, checking a tablet. "Good. The difficult ones cost extra to sedate." Seraphine climbed into the back of the van. The interior smelled like bleach and copper. There were 6 other girls already inside, huddled on bench seats that ran along the walls. One of them, a stunning brunette with perfect skin and terrified eyes, looked at Seraphine and frowned. "What are you doing here?" the girl whispered. "You look half dead already." "Maybe I am," Seraphine said, and sat down on the cold metal floor because all the bench seats were taken. The van doors slammed shut. The engine started. Lion disappeared behind them. The brunette's name was Jessica. She cried for the first 2 hours, quietly, into her hands, like she was embarrassed to take up space with her fear. Seraphine didn't cry. She leaned her head against the vibrating wall and counted the minutes. Zurich was 8 hours away. She was right. They arrived at dawn. The facility sat in the mountains outside the city, hidden behind walls that looked like they belonged to a luxury spa. Marble pillars, manicured gardens, a fountain in the courtyard that probably cost more than Victor's entire debt. Inside it was a cattle ranch wearing a designer suit. The girls were separated, showered, given medical gowns that felt like paper, led one by one into examination rooms that smelled like antiseptic and something else, something sweet and cloying, like overripe fruit. Dr. Graves was the head physician. He was human, thrall-marked. The bite scars on his neck were old, faded to silver against pale skin. He looked at Seraphine the way a mechanic looks at a broken-down car. "Lie down," he said. She did. The examination was thorough, clinical, blood draw, heart rate, lung capacity. Dr. Graves frowned at the monitor. "Heart rate 42, he muttered to the nurse. "Iron levels abysmal. Platelet response sluggish." The nurse hovered her pen over a tablet. "Reject pile?" Dr. Graves held up the vial of Seraphine's blood. The overhead light turned it dark red, almost brown. "No," he said after a long pause. "General lot. Mark her low grade. Someone might want a housekeeper too weak to run." The nurse typed. Seraphine watched her own classification appear on the screen. Lot 404. Domestic. Low grade. Constitutional deficiencies. "Sit up," Dr. Graves said. 3 injections. Standard protocol." "What's in them?" Seraphine asked. Dr. Graves met her eyes for the first time. There was something in his expression. Something that might have been guilt or might have been exhaustion. "Vitamins," he said. "Iron supplement, immune booster. Hold still." The first injection burned going in. The second felt like ice. The third made the back of her skull ache. "Headaches are normal," Dr. Graves said, not looking at her. "They'll pass in a few days." They didn't pass. For 3 weeks, Seraphine lived in a sterile room with white walls and a single window that didn't open. She was fed rich food, rare steak, spinach, liver, things meant to fatten livestock before sale. The headaches got worse. Sometimes, late at night, she would wake up with her hands moving without her permission, reaching for things she didn't want, tracing patterns on the wall she didn't understand. She told no one, and she watched Jessica, who got the silk robes and the vitamin IV drips, who was being groomed for the high-value lots, who would sell for millions to some aristocrat who wanted a beautiful pet. Seraphine got a gray linen shift dress that hung off her bony frame like a shroud. The night of the auction came. The transport was another van. This one had tinted windows and leather seats. The girls sat in silence. Jessica's hands shook so badly she couldn't fasten her seatbelt. Seraphine fastened it for her. "Thank you," Jessica whispered. "Don't thank me yet," Seraphine said. Vienna after dark was a city of old ghosts and new money. The van wound through the narrow streets, past buildings that had stood since before the Habsburgs fell. Then down, underground, into a parking garage that descended 5 levels beneath the streets. The Palais du Sang sat at the bottom like a jewel in a coffin. It had been an opera house once, 200 years ago, the kind of place where Mozart might have conducted. Now it was a marketplace for the immortal elite. The auction hall was massive. Tiered seating rose in semicircles around a central stage, red velvet seats, gold trim, chandeliers that dripped crystal like frozen tears. Seraphine stood backstage with the other lots, listening to the murmur of the crowd beyond the curtain. The air smelled like expensive cologne and old blood. An auctioneer in a crisp suit walked past, checking his tablet. His name tag read, "Sterling." "Lot 12, you're up," he called. A girl with platinum hair walked through the curtain. The crowd's murmur became a roar. Bidding started at 1 million, sold in 90 seconds for 2.8. One by one, the beautiful girls walked onto that stage and were bought like art or livestock or investments. Jessica went for 3 million to a duke from Paris who smiled like a knife. Then Sterling checked his tablet and sighed. "Lot 404, he called. "Rousseau." Seraphine's heart was beating too slow. She could feel it. That sluggish thump-thump in her chest, like a drum with a broken skin. She walked through the curtain. The spotlight hit her like a physical blow. Blinding, hot. She squinted, trying to see the faces in the darkness beyond. Sterling's voice echoed through the hall. "Seraphine Rousseau, age 22, domestic skills adequate, blood type A positive. Note, subject has constitutional issues, suitable for light labor only." Silence. Usually, Sterling had explained backstage, the paddles went up immediately. A feeding frenzy. But for Seraphine, there was nothing. Just 10 seconds of dead quiet that stretched like taffy. Then someone in the back rows laughed. "She looks like a corpse already," a voice shouted. "I wouldn't feed her to my hounds." More laughter. Seraphine stood in the center of that stage and felt heat crawl up her neck. Not shame. Anger. Crystallized anger. Sharp and cold. "Starting bid," Sterling said, his voice dropping with embarrassment. 5,000. No movement. 2,500. Nothing. Seraphine's hands curled into fists. She looked out at that dark crowd of monsters and thought, "You call me defective? I survived 22 years with nothing. What have you ever survived?" "If there are no bids," Sterling sighed, signaling to the guards, "subject will be remanded for disposal." Disposal, the incinerator, or the feral pits where they threw the rejects to feed the mad ones who'd lost their minds to bloodlust. The guard stepped forward. Heavy boots on marble. Seraphine closed her eyes. So this is it, she thought. Victor got his debt cleared, and I get the trash chute. Then a voice cut through the hall like a blade through silk. "Wait." The word didn't shout. Didn't need to. It had the weight of centuries behind it. The entire auditorium froze. Even the guards stopped mid-step. Seraphine's eyes snapped open. High above the main floor there was a private box. The royal box. Sterling had mentioned it backstage, whispering. It had been empty for 30 years. The Eastern Territories' king didn't attend auctions, hadn't purchased a human in 300 years. Now a figure stood at the railing of that box. He was wearing a suit that cost more than Seraphine's childhood home. Black, perfectly tailored, with a silver watch that caught the chandelier light. His hair was dark as a raven's wing, swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble. And his eyes. Even from the stage, even through the spotlight's glare, Seraphine could see them. Violet. Electric violet. Like lightning trapped in ice. "I bid," the man said. Sterling stammered, actually stammered. Your Majesty, for this lot? We have a pristine B negative coming up in—" "I did not ask for your inventory analysis." The voice was a baritone, deep enough to vibrate in the floorboards. And there was something in it. Not cruelty. Weariness, like a man who had spoken the same sentences for so many centuries that the words had worn grooves in his throat. "How much?" the man continued. Sterling swallowed. The opening is 2,500, sire. 50 million. The gasp that went through the room sucked all the oxygen out of the air. Seraphine's knees buckled. She grabbed the podium to keep from falling. $50 million for the girl nobody wanted. Sterling's gavel hit the block so hard the handle cracked. Sold! Sold to His Majesty King Theron Blackwell of the Eastern Territory. The crowd erupted, voices overlapping. Shock and confusion and something else. Fear. Seraphine looked up at the royal box. Theron Blackwell looked back. He didn't smile, didn't gloat. His expression was unreadable. But his eyes, those violet eyes, stared at her with an intensity that felt like he was counting the bones beneath her skin. Then he turned and walked away from the railing, disappeared into shadow. Seraphine stood alone on that stage, spotlight burning on her shoulders, and realized with cold clarity that she had just been bought by the only creature on earth who knew exactly what she was. She just didn't know what that meant yet. The ride to Blackwell Citadel was silent. Seraphine sat in the back of a Maybach with leather seats softer than any bed she'd ever slept in. The partition between her and the driver was tinted black. She could see nothing, hear nothing except the hum of the engine and her own heartbeat. Out the window, Vienna disappeared. The city lights gave way to darkness. Forest, mountains. The car climbed higher and higher into the Austrian Alps, winding through roads that looked like they'd been cut from the cliffside with a knife. She expected a gothic nightmare, gargoyles and dungeons and iron maidens. Instead, the citadel appeared like a blade thrust into the mountain. It was modern, brutalist, all sharp angles and dark stone and glass that reflected the moonlight like mirrors. It jutted out from the rock face, cantilevered over a drop that must have been 3,000 feet. It looked lonely. The car stopped in a courtyard of polished black stone. The door opened. An elderly woman stood there, human, thrall-marked. She wore a tweed suit sharp enough to cut and carried herself like a retired general. "I am Mrs. Sterling," she said. Her voice had the crisp efficiency of old money. "Follow me. Do not touch the walls. Do not touch the art. And do not, under any circumstances, enter the West Wing." "Where is he?" Seraphine asked. Her voice cracked on the last word. Mrs. Sterling's expression didn't change. "The king rests during the day. You will be shown to your quarters. You will bathe. You will eat, and you will wait." The interior of the citadel was a cavern of gray marble and recessed lighting. Everything was clean, geometric, cold as a museum. Mrs. Sterling led Seraphine through hallways that seemed to stretch for miles. Their footsteps echoed. Finally, a door. Mrs. Sterling pushed it open. The room was bigger than Victor's entire townhouse. Floor-to-ceiling windows overlooked the drop. 3,000 feet of empty air. The bed was covered in silk. There was a wardrobe filled with clothes, cashmere, wool, no Maid uniforms. "What am I supposed to do?" Seraphine asked. Mrs. Sterling looked at her for the first time with something that might have been pity. "Recover," she said. The door closed. The lock clicked. Seraphine stood in that enormous room and walked to the window. Outside, the Alps stretched in every direction, snow and stone and darkness. She pressed her palm against the glass. It was cold. Down below, so far down, it made her dizzy. She could see lights. A village, maybe, or just reflections of stars on snow. She thought about jumping. The glass was thick, but maybe if she found something heavy enough. Then she thought about the look in Theron Blackwell's eyes. That intensity. That calculation. He hadn't bought her to kill her. Not yet. He'd bought her because she was a problem he needed to solve. Seraphine stepped back from the window, sat down on the edge of the silk bed. Her hands were shaking. For the first time since Victor had made that phone call 3 weeks ago, she let herself feel it. The fear, the exhaustion, the weight of knowing she was alone in a fortress at the edge of the world, owned by a creature who'd lived 800 years. But she didn't cry. Instead, she lay back on that silk bed and stared at the ceiling. And she started planning. 3 days passed. Mrs. Sterling brought trays of food, rich food, rare steak, spinach salad, iron pills with every meal. Seraphine ate because she needed strength, not because she was hungry. The headaches got worse. Sometimes she'd wake up in the middle of the day with her hands pressed against the wall, tracing symbols she didn't recognize. On the third night, the door was left unlocked. Seraphine tested the handle at 2 a.m. It turned. She slipped into the hallway. The citadel was silent. Dark except for soft blue lights recessed into the floor. She walked carefully, her left leg aching with each step. She found the library by accident, a massive set of double doors, slightly ajar. Inside, it was 2 stories of books, leather spines, gilt lettering, the smell of dust and old paper. Seraphine ran her fingers along the shelves, stopped at a title, The Lineage of the First Era. I wouldn't read that one, she spun. Theron Blackwell sat in a leather chair in the corner of the room. She hadn't seen him, hadn't heard him. He was just there, like he'd materialized from shadow. He held a glass of amber liquid, whiskey probably. He wore a black dress shirt unbuttoned at the collar, dark trousers, no shoes. He looked younger than he had at the auction, not young, but less ancient, like maybe he was only 40 instead of 800. "Your Majesty," Seraphine managed. She tried to curtsy and nearly fell. Her leg buckled. "Don't," Theron said. "I'm not your king." "And you look ridiculous trying to bow with a limp," Seraphine straightened. Heat flooded her face. "Then what am I supposed to call you?" "Theron will do." He swirled the whiskey in his glass. "Sit down. You're making me nervous, hovering there like you're about to bolt." Seraphine sat on the edge of a sofa across from him. Her heart was doing that slow, sluggish beat again. Thump, thump, like it was forgetting how to work. "You paid $50 million for me," she said. "I did." "Why?" The word came out harder than she'd intended, sharper. Theron looked at her over the rim of his glass. "Because you're defective," he said. Seraphine's jaw tightened. "I know." "No." Theron set down his glass, stood. He moved with a liquid grace that was terrifying to watch. Not human movement, predator movement. "You don't know." He crossed the room, stood in front of her, leaned down, hands on the armrests of her chair, trapping her. He smelled like rain and cedarwood. "The doctors at the facility," Theron said, his voice low, "are idiots. Dr. Graves looked at your iron levels and declared you worthless. He didn't look at the resonance." "Resonance?" Theron leaned closer, not to her face, to her neck. Seraphine froze, every muscle locked. She felt him inhale, slow, deep, like he was breathing in her pulse. Then he pulled back. His expression was a mix of confusion and something else, anger maybe, or wonder. "Your blood doesn't smell like food," he said. Seraphine blinked. "What?" To a vampire, human blood is constant noise, a scent so overwhelming it drowns out everything else. It's hunger and memory and need all at once. It never stops. Theron straightened, walked to the window. "I've lived 800 years listening to that noise, every heartbeat within 5 miles, every breath. It's maddening." He turned back to her. "But you," he said, "you smell like static, like void, like nothing." Seraphine stared at him. "So you bought me to be an air freshener?" Theron's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "Almost. I bought you because when you're in the room, the noise stops. For the first time in 8 centuries I can think, I can rest." He paused. "I haven't slept in 200 years, Seraphine. Not really. But around you, the silence is so complete I could almost believe in peace." Seraphine's hands were gripping the armrest so tightly her knuckles were white. "That's the only reason?" "No." Theron's expression went hard. "A human with silent blood hasn't been born since 1437. The last one was a woman named Isolde." The name hung in the air like smoke. "What happened to her?" Seraphine asked. Theron looked at her with eyes that had seen empires fall. "The High Council found out what she was. They wanted to study her, to understand how her blood worked. They promised they wouldn't hurt her." His voice dropped. "They lied. They tore her apart on a table in Prague to see how she worked. I found what was left 3 days later." Seraphine felt ice slide down her spine. "And you think they'll do the same to me?" "I know they will." Theron walked back to her, knelt down so they were eye level. "I didn't buy you to eat you, Seraphine. I bought you to hide you. Because if the High Council finds out what you are, they won't just kill you. They'll start a war to possess you." The room was too quiet, too still. Seraphine met his eyes, those violet eyes that had seen centuries. "So I'm a prisoner," she said. "You're a guest under extreme protection," Theron corrected. "But yes, you cannot leave." "And if I try?" Theron's expression softened, just a fraction, just enough to let something human show through the predator mask. "Then you'll die before you reach the main gate. The wolves in these woods aren't metaphors." He stood, walked toward the door. Get some sleep," he said without turning around. "Tomorrow we start testing. I need to know if you're just a genetic anomaly." He paused in the doorway. or a weapon sent to kill me. Then he was gone. Seraphine sat alone in that library. 2 stories of books, leather and gold and silence. She looked down at her hands. They were the same hands that had scrubbed floors in Lyon, that had packed that small bag with the stolen knife. Now they were shaking. She wasn't safe. She was in the eye of a hurricane, and somewhere miles away in a penthouse that overlooked Manhattan, a phone was ringing. Constantine Draven picked it up on the second ring. "Did Blackwell take the bait?" he asked, swirling a glass of thick red liquid that was definitely not wine. "He did, my lord." The voice on the other end was Sterling's, the auctioneer. 50 million. Took her straight to the Citadel. Constantine smiled. His fangs were serrated, old-world fangs. The kind that tore instead of punctured. Perfect. He thinks he's hiding a rare artifact. He has no idea he just invited the Trojan horse into his bedroom. "Should I activate the protocol, my lord?" "Not yet." Constantine leaned back in his chair. Outside, New York glittered like a field of stars. Let her settle. Let him trust her. Let him need her. He took a sip from his glass. Human blood. O negative. Fresh. "When she wakes up," Constantine whispered, "Theron Blackwell will be nothing but ash, and the Eastern Territory will finally kneel." He hung up. On his desk, a file sat open, printed across the top in red letters, "Asset number 404. Protocol. Status armed." Inside, a photo of Seraphine Rousseau, taken at the Zurich facility while she slept, and beneath it, in Dr. Graves' handwriting, 3 words in ancient Sumerian, the activation phrase. The storm was coming. Seraphine just didn't know it yet. 6 weeks changed everything. Not quickly, not dramatically, but like stone wearing down underwater, Seraphine Rousseau became something else inside Blackwell Citadel. The testing had started the morning after their conversation in the library. Dr. Graves, the same physician who'd marked her as low-grade livestock in Zurich, now worked in a laboratory 3 floors beneath the main structure. He'd been extracted from the auction house, conscripted. He had no choice. Neither did Seraphine. But she learned fast. The null field, as Theron called it, had a radius of 15 feet. Within that space, vampire telepathy died. Sensory magic failed. It was like a dead zone in the middle of a battlefield where all the radios went silent. Dr. Graves ran the tests with hands that shook. Sometimes Seraphine caught him staring at her like she was a grenade with the pin pulled. "Increase the distance," Theron said one morning, standing outside the 15-foot perimeter. His voice had that edge it got when he was thinking tactically. Not as a king, as a general. Seraphine stood in the center of the lab. Around her, in concentric circles, they'd placed vampire thralls, marked humans whose minds were linked to their masters. "Now," Theron said. The thralls all spoke at once, a single sentence, synchronized perfectly through the telepathic link to Theron. Then Seraphine breathed. She didn't know what she did, didn't understand the mechanism, but something inside her blood, inside her cells, pushed outward. The thralls closest to her stopped mid-word. Their eyes went blank, the link severed like cut wire. Dr. Graves made a note on his tablet. His hand trembled. "Radius increased to 18 feet, he said. "Subject shows potential for weaponization," Theron finished. He looked at Seraphine through the glass partition. "If we could amplify that, project it across a battlefield, it would disable an entire command structure," Colonel Voss said. The vampire stood beside Theron, arms crossed, retired military, Eastern Front, World War I. He had the bearing of a man who'd seen mechanized slaughter and survived. Cut the head off the snake, every soldier linked to a hive mind would drop. Seraphine met Theron's eyes through the glass. "Is that what I am now?" she asked. "A weapon?" Theron's expression didn't change, but something in those violet eyes shifted, something that might have been regret. "Yes," he said, "because that's the only way you stay alive." The headaches were getting worse. Seraphine didn't tell anyone. Not Dr. Graves, not Mrs. Sterling, certainly not Theron. They came in waves, sharp, blinding, like someone was driving a heated nail through her temple and into her brain. They lasted 30 seconds, sometimes a minute. Then they'd fade, leaving her dizzy and nauseous. She'd wake up at 3 in the morning with her hands pressed against the wall again, tracing patterns, symbols she didn't recognize. Her fingers moved without permission. Once she found herself standing at her door, trying to pick the lock with a hairpin she didn't remember taking from the dresser. She threw the hairpin away. But the next night, there were 2 more in her hand. Something was wrong. Something beyond the null field, beyond the testing. But Seraphine was good at surviving. And survival meant keeping your weaknesses hidden. So she swallowed the headaches, hid the tremors, and learned everything she could about the world Theron was trying to navigate. The Summit of 5 Territories was announced 4 weeks after Seraphine's arrival. Theron called it over breakfast in the Citadel's dining hall. Not a grand announcement. Just a statement delivered between sips of black coffee that probably cost more than Victor's monthly rent had. "The votes happen in 2 weeks," he said. "Here, at the Citadel." Seraphine looked up from her plate. Rare steak again. She was so tired of steak. Votes for what? To strip Constantine Draven of his emergency war powers. Theron set down his cup. Powers he's held for 90 years. Powers that let him conscript soldiers, seize assets, execute dissidents without trial. Colonel Voss, standing by the window, grunted. Powers he's used to build the largest standing army in vampire history. He won't give them up, Seraphine said. No. Theron's smile was sharp. Which is why we're forcing a vote. The council charter requires 4 of 5 territorial sovereigns to agree. I have 2 votes, myself and Duchess Kira of the Northern Reaches. You need 2 more. 3 are undecided. Duke Alaric of Saxony, Sovereign Amara of Nubia, Baron Frost of New England. Theron leaned back in his chair. They're coming here, to meet, to debate, to decide if they want to risk Constantine's wrath by voting against him. Seraphine understood immediately. And you need me there. Your null field means they can speak freely. No spies, no telepathic eavesdropping, no fear that Constantine is listening through his network. Theron met her eyes. You're the only secure room in a world of open doors. So I sit in a corner and be furniture. You sit at the table, Theron corrected, and you listen and you learn. Voss made a sound that might have been approval or might have been a cough. Seraphine cut another piece of steak, chewed slowly, swallowed. What do I get? She asked. Theron raised an eyebrow. You're negotiating? You taught me to. You said I wasn't a pet. I was an asset. Assets have terms. Voss actually smiled. Theron studied her for a long moment. Then he nodded. Name them. When this is over. When Constantine is neutralized and the war powers are stripped, I want my freedom. Full legal emancipation. No ownership. No bond. Done. And you shut down every trafficking operation in your territory, not just the auctions, all of it, the breeding farms, the blood banks that use unwilling donors, everything. Theron's expression went cold, not with anger, with calculation. That will cost billions, he said. Entire industries will collapse. I don't care. It will make enemies. You already have enemies. Theron looked at Voss. The colonel shrugged. She's not wrong, sire. Theron turned back to Seraphine, extended his hand across the table. Agreed, if we survive. Seraphine shook his hand. His skin was cold, dry. The grip was firm enough to crush bone, but he held back. When he released her, she could still feel the ghost of his fingers. The delegates arrive in 1 week, Theron said. You'll attend every meeting, every dinner, every private conversation. Your presence is the guarantee of security. Understood. And Seraphine? She looked up. Don't trust any of them, Theron said quietly. Not Alaric, not Amara, not Frost. They're not here because they believe in reform. They're here because they're terrified of what happens if Constantine consolidates more power. Fear makes people dangerous. So does desperation, Seraphine said. Theron's smile was sad. Yes, it does. Duke Alaric of Saxony arrived first. He was old guard, 700 years, silver hair pulled back in a queue, a scar across his throat from some long-ago assassination attempt that had failed. He wore tailored suits and spoke 4 languages and smiled like a shark. "The famous Null-blood," he said, when Seraphine was introduced in the Citadel's strategy room. "Remarkable. You look so ordinary." "Thank you," Seraphine said flatly. Alaric laughed. It was not a kind sound. Sovereign Amara arrived at sunset. She was younger, only 300. She'd built her power base in Nubia through cunning and alliances instead of brute force. She wore traditional robes in deep purple and gold. Her eyes were sharp. She shook Seraphine's hand, held it a moment too long. "You're the reason we can speak freely," Amara said. "That's considerable power for a human." "I'm just the room," Seraphine replied. "Rooms have ears. You have a mind." Amara smiled. "Use it wisely." Baron Frost was the last to arrive, New England aristocracy. 250 years old. He'd fought in the Revolutionary War, on the British side. He still held a grudge about losing. He looked at Seraphine like she was a curiosity, a glitch in the system. "Blackwell paid $50 million for you," Frost said over dinner the first night. "I could buy a small army for that." "You probably did," Seraphine said. "How's that working out?" Duchess Kira laughed so hard she choked on her wine. The summit lasted 3 days. Seraphine sat in that strategy room for 16 hours a day, listening to vampires who'd lived centuries debate the future of the world. Alaric wanted concessions, trade agreements, territory in the Balkans. Amara wanted guarantees, protection for her borders, access to Theron's intelligence network. Frost wanted nothing. He was paralyzed by fear. Constantine had agents everywhere. What if the vote failed? What if Constantine retaliated? And through it all, Seraphine listened. She learned that power wasn't about strength. It was about knowing what people wanted, what they feared, what they'd trade for safety. On the second night, after the delegates had retired, Theron found her in the library. She was reading a treaty from 1815, trying to understand the legal framework of vampire governance. "You're good at this," he said. Seraphine didn't look up. "At what?" "Politics. You see the angles, the leverage points?" "I survived 22 years with nothing," Seraphine said. "You learn to read people when your life depends on it." Theron sat down across from her. He looked tired, actually tired, the kind of exhaustion that came from carrying weight for too long. "When I was young," he said, "I thought power meant control, the ability to bend others to your will. I crushed anyone who disagreed. I built an empire on fear. What changed? I got old, and I realized fear is a foundation built on sand. Eventually, it shifts. Eventually, everything you built collapses." He paused. "Isolde tried to tell me that. I didn't listen. Then she was gone." Seraphine closed the book. "Is that why you're doing this? The summit? The vote? Trying to limit Constantine's power?" "I'm doing it because I'm tired of living in a world I helped create. A world where people like you are sold like cattle." Theron met her eyes. "I can't bring Isolde back, but maybe I can stop the system that killed her." There was a moment, just one, where Seraphine saw past the predator, past the king, to the man who'd been carrying guilt for 600 years. "We'll get the votes," she said. "How do you know?" "Because they're more afraid of Constantine than they are of you. Fear is a foundation built on sand, but you're offering them rock." Theron smiled. It was a real smile. Small, sad, human. "You should sleep," he said. "Tomorrow's the final vote." But Seraphine didn't sleep that night, because the headache came back, worse than ever. And this time, when she woke up at 3 a.m., her hands weren't just tracing patterns on the wall, they were trying to unlock the door again. And she couldn't stop them. The vote was scheduled for noon. At 10 a.m., Mrs. Sterling answered the door to find a visitor. Humanitarian inspection, the man said, presenting credentials stamped with the High Council seal. I'm Mikhail Volkov, envoy of the Western Territory. Mrs. Sterling's face went pale. The summit is closed session. No outsiders. The humanitarian clause supersedes closed sessions. Mikhail smiled. It didn't reach his eyes. Unless King Blackwell wishes to be in violation of council law, she let him in. Mikhail Volkov was beautiful in the way poisonous things are beautiful. Blonde hair, blue eyes like Arctic ice. A white suit that probably cost more than Seraphine's auction price. He found Theron in the strategy room reviewing final arguments with Colonel Voss. You can't be here, Theron said flatly. I'm invoking humanitarian oversight, Mikhail replied. I'm here to ensure the well-being of the human asset purchased at Vienna. Asset 404, Seraphine Rousseau. Theron's jaw tightened. She's fine. Nevertheless, I'll need to see her, interview her, verify conditions. Mikhail's smile sharpened. Unless you're hiding something? Voss's hand drifted toward his sidearm. Stand down, Theron said quietly. Then to Mikhail, you have 20 minutes. Seraphine was in her room when Mrs. Sterling knocked. There's a visitor, the older woman said. Her voice was strained. An envoy from the High Council. He's demanding to see you. The headache spiked. Sharp. Blinding. Seraphine gripped the doorframe. Now? King's orders. He'll be in the solarium. Seraphine followed Mrs. Sterling through the halls. Her left leg ached. The headache pulsed in time with her heartbeat. The solarium was all glass and winter light. Mikhail stood by the windows, looking out at the mountains. Miss Rousseau, he said without turning, thank you for seeing me. I didn't have a choice. None of us do. That's the tragedy of our existence. Mikhail turned. His blue eyes scanned her face. You look unwell. I'm fine. Are you? You're very pale, trembling even. Tell me, has King Blackwell been feeding from you? No. Has he harmed you in any way? No. Mikhail walked closer. Each step was measured. Predatory. You know, he said conversationally, 400 years ago, I believed in something. I thought vampires and humans could coexist, not as masters and servants, but as equals. I proposed it to the council. He stopped 3 feet away. Theron Blackwell was the one who destroyed that dream. He stood before the council and called me a fool, said humans were livestock, nothing more. He crushed my movement, exiled my followers. Do you know what that kind of betrayal does to an idealist? Seraphine met his eyes. It makes you bitter. It makes you realistic. Mikhail smiled. He hasn't changed, Seraphine. He bought you because you're useful, a tool. When you stop being useful, you'll be discarded, just like Isolde was. That's not true. Isn't it? He told you about her, I assume, the first null blood? Did he tell you he was the one who gave her to the council? He thought they'd study her gently, learn from her. Instead, they vivisected her, and Theron did nothing to stop it. The headache exploded. Seraphine gasped. Her vision went white. Are you all right? Mikhail asked. He reached out, took her hand. His ring was cold against her palm, silver, with a small stone that pulsed with faint blue light. Let me help you sit. The pulse from the ring hit her nervous system like lightning. For 1 second, Seraphine felt something inside her head click, like a lock opening, like a door that had been sealed suddenly swinging wide. Then everything went dark. When she opened her eyes, she was lying on the floor of the solarium. Mikhail was gone. Theron was there, kneeling beside her, his hands on her shoulders. Seraphine, can you hear me? She could hear him. But the voice sounded far away. Inside her head, something else was speaking. Protocol Alpha, eliminate primary target. Protocol Beta, destroy coalition documents. Protocol Gamma, transmit defensive grid access codes. The words weren't hers. They were cold, mechanical, like a computer program running in the background of her thoughts. I'm fine, Seraphine heard herself say. Her voice sounded normal, calm, but inside she was screaming. Mikhail triggered something, Theron said. I felt it. The null field spiked. What did he do? Nothing. We just talked. Liar. She was a liar. But her mouth wouldn't say the truth. Protocol Alpha. Eliminate primary target. She needed to kill Theron. No, she didn't. She didn't want to hurt him. But her hands wanted to find a weapon. You need to rest, Theron said. He helped her stand. The vote is in an hour. Can you manage? Yes. Protocol Alpha. Eliminate primary target. I'll be fine. The vote happened at noon in the strategy room. Seraphine sat in her usual place, the corner, the null field zone where everyone could speak freely. Theron presented the final arguments, the case against Constantine's emergency powers, the need for reform. Duke Alaric voted yes. His price had been paid. Territory in the Balkans. Sovereign Amara voted yes. Her guarantees secured. Baron Frost hesitated. His hands shook on the table. If Constantine retaliates, he began. He won't, Theron said. 4 votes strip his legal authority. He'll have no choice but to comply. Frost looked at Seraphine. What do you think? Inside her head, Protocol Alpha. Eliminate primary target. I think you're afraid, Seraphine said. But courage isn't the absence of fear. It's doing what's right despite it. Frost voted yes. The room erupted. Duchess Kira embraced Theron. Alaric poured champagne. Seraphine stood, smiled, said the right things. And inside her head the protocol screamed. She waited until 2 a.m. The citadel was silent. Theron was in his study, reviewing implementation plans for the power transfer. Seraphine walked through the halls. Her left leg didn't ache. The protocols had turned off her pain receptors. She found the medical bay, found the tray of surgical instruments Dr. Graves had left out. She picked up a scalpel. Protocol Alpha, eliminate primary target. She walked to Theron's study. The door was ajar. He sat at his desk, reading. He didn't hear her approach, didn't sense her because the null field masked her presence. Seraphine raised the scalpel. Her hand moved fast, faster than human. The protocols burning through her life force to generate speed. She aimed for his throat. Theron's reflexes saved him. He moved, impossibly fast. The scalpel missed his jugular by a millimeter, sliced a thin red line across his neck. "Seraphine!" he roared. But she was already moving, no hesitation, no fear, just cold mechanical purpose. She slashed again. Theron caught her wrist. "Stop, this isn't you." Protocol Alpha, eliminate primary target. She drove her knee into his ribs, heard something crack. Theron grunted, released her wrist. Alarms blared. Colonel Voss burst through the door. "Sire!" Seraphine turned, threw the scalpel. It embedded in Voss's shoulder. "She's compromised," Voss shouted. "Terminate!" 2 guards rushed in. Seraphine moved like water, like violence given form. She'd never trained, never fought. But the protocols knew how. She broke one guard's arm, drove her palm into the other's nose, bone crunched. "Don't kill her," Theron commanded. But Seraphine wasn't trying to fight them. She was trying to reach the door. Protocol Beta. Destroy coalition documents. The treaty drafts were in the war room, 3 floors down. She ran. Theron chased. "Seraphine, fight it! Whatever Mikhail did, fight it!" Inside her head, the real Seraphine was trapped, screaming, beating against walls that wouldn't break. She reached the war room. The documents were spread across the table. She grabbed them, shoved them toward the fireplace. Theron tackled her. They hit the floor, papers scattered. "I don't want to hurt you," he said. His hands pinned her shoulders. Blood dripped from the cut on his neck onto her face. "Please, come back." For 1 second, Seraphine's eyes focused, really focused. "I can't," she whispered. "I can't stop." Then the protocol surged. She head-butted him. His nose broke. He reared back. Seraphine rolled, stood, ran. Not to the documents anymore, to the ammunition depot. Protocol, Gamma, transmit defensive grid access codes. To do that, she needed access to the central server. But the server room was hardened, shielded. No wireless access, so the protocols had a backup plan. destroy the ammunition depot. Shields would fail automatically to prevent secondary explosions from damaging the structure. Seraphine reached the depot. Her hands moved without her permission, typing access codes she shouldn't know. The timer armed. 20 minutes. Behind her, Theron arrived. Voss. A dozen guards. "Seraphine, step away from the panel," Theron said. She turned, looked at him with eyes that were hers, but also weren't. "I'm sorry," she said. "I'm so sorry. It's not your fault." "It is. I should have told you. The headaches, the hands moving on their own. I knew something was wrong." Theron moved closer, slowly, like approaching a wounded animal. "We can fix this. Dr. Graves can remove whatever Mikhail put in you." "No time. 20 minutes until detonation." Voss swore. "Sire, we need to defuse it." "If you defuse it," Seraphine said, "I'll upload the codes while you're distracted. The protocols won't let me stop. I've been fighting for hours. I'm losing." Theron looked at the timer, at Seraphine, at the choice in front of him. "There has to be another way," he said. "There isn't." 15 minutes. "You could kill me," Seraphine said. "I'd rather die by your hand than theirs." "No." "Theron." "No." 10 minutes. Seraphine could feel the protocols getting stronger. Her fingers twitched toward the keyboard, toward the upload command. "Do it now," she said, "or we all die. Please." Theron's face was anguish incarnate. "Forgive me," he whispered. He moved behind her, wrapped his arm around her throat. Sleeper hold. Seraphine fought. The protocols made her fight even though she didn't want to. Her nails raked his arms, drew blood. "I'm sorry," Theron said into her ear. "I failed you like I failed Isolde." The pressure increased. Blood flowed to her brain cut off. The world dimmed. The last thing Seraphine heard was Voss shouting, "Timer's still running. 3 minutes." Then darkness. When Theron laid Seraphine's unconscious body on the floor, his hands were shaking. "Defuse it," he ordered. Voss ran to the panel. His fingers flew. "It's not responding. She changed the codes. I can't." 2 minutes. "Evacuate the citadel," Theron said. "Sire, the delegates—" "Get them to the bunkers, now!" The guards scattered. Alarms blared louder. Theron knelt beside Seraphine. Her pulse was weak, thready. She'd burned through so much energy fighting the protocols. 1 minute. "I'm sorry," he said again. "I should have protected you better." 30 seconds. Voss grabbed his arm. "Sire, we have to go." Theron picked up Seraphine, cradled her against his chest. "Run," he said. They ran. The explosion came at 0000, not massive, controlled, but enough. The shockwave rippled through the citadel. Emergency protocols activated. The defensive shields flickered, then died. The blue shimmer that had protected Blackwell Citadel for 200 years went dark. In the forest beyond the walls, 3,000 pairs of eyes opened. Red eyes. Constantine's army had been waiting for 6 weeks. Now the door was open. A horn blew, low, mournful, the sound of war. Theron stood in the courtyard, Seraphine still unconscious in his arms, and watched the darkness come alive. Thralls on all fours, ghouls in tactical gear, vampire knights in black armor, and behind them, on the ridge, a figure in a blood-red cloak. Constantine Draven had come personally. His voice boomed across the valley, amplified by magic. "Theron Blackwell, your coup ends tonight. Send out the delegates, and I'll let your soldiers live." Theron handed Seraphine to Voss. "Get her to the panic room," he said. "Lock it. Don't open it for anyone but me." "And you?" Theron's eyes flared violet. His fangs descended, 800 years of controlled violence unleashed. "I'm going to remind them why they used to fear me." He leaped from the courtyard to the wall. 30 feet, effortless. The army charged, and the siege of Blackwell Citadel began. Inside the panic room, deep beneath the citadel, Seraphine's eyes snapped open. They were black, empty, soulless. The protocols weren't done. She looked at the vent in the ceiling and started to climb. The siege of Blackwell Citadel did not begin with glory. It began with mud and blood, and the sound of bones breaking. Theron Blackwell stood on the northern wall, coat discarded, shirt soaked through with red that wasn't his own. Around him, the bodies of the first wave lay twisted in positions that defied anatomy. He'd killed them with his bare hands. No weapons, no mercy. Just 800 years of accumulated rage, finally given permission to breathe. Below, the second wave gathered, ghouls howling, thralls loading crossbows with silver-tipped bolts, vampire knights in formation, shields locked, waiting for the order. Constantine's voice echoed from the ridge. "You cannot win, Blackwell. Surrender the delegates and the girl, and I'll grant your soldiers clemency." Theron spat blood over the wall. "Come and take them." Colonel Voss appeared at his side, rifle in hand. "Sire, Duchess Kira's reinforcements are 30 minutes out, 1,000 strong, but we're outnumbered 3-1 until they arrive. Then we hold for 30 minutes. Against that?" Voss gestured at the army massing in the darkness. 3,000 soldiers, disciplined, equipped, linked through Constantine's telepathic network into a single coordinated killing machine. "We've held against worse," Theron said. "When? Never. But there's a first time for everything." The horn blew again. The second wave charged. Inside the panic room, Seraphine crawled through the ventilation shaft. Her body moved without her permission. Hands and knees scraping against metal. The protocols had shut off her pain receptors again. She didn't feel the cuts, didn't feel her ankle twist and swell as she climbed. Protocol Gamma. Transmit defensive grid access codes. The main server room was 3 levels up. The vents would take her there. Inside her mind, the real Seraphine screamed, "Stop. Please stop. I don't want this." But her body didn't listen. It never listened anymore. She reached a junction, turned left. The sound of battle vibrated through the metal. Explosions, gunfire, the wet crunch of bodies hitting stone. People were dying. Because of her. Seraphine's hands kept moving, pulling her forward, inch by inch, through the darkness. Then she heard something else. Voices. Coming from a vent grate below, she looked down through the slats. Dr. Graves, in his laboratory, packing equipment into cases with shaking hands. And someone else, a woman, gray hair, efficient tweed suit, Mrs. Sterling. "We should evacuate," Mrs. Sterling said. "The Citadel won't hold." "I can't." Dr. Graves dropped a beaker. It shattered. He didn't pick it up. "If I run, Constantine kills my family, my daughter, my grandson. He has them in Prague, hostages." Mrs. Sterling's face softened. "I didn't know. No one knows. That's the point." Dr. Graves sank into a chair, put his head in his hands. "I implanted the nanobots in Zurich. I activated them with the injections. I'm the one who turned that girl into a weapon, and I did it to save my own family." The silence stretched. "We're all cowards in the end," Mrs. Sterling said quietly. "I served Constantine for 40 years before Theron freed me. I did things, terrible things, because I was afraid to die. Does it get easier, the guilt? No, you just learn to carry it." Dr. Graves looked up. "Can we stop her? Remove the nanobots?" "Not without killing her. The technology is too integrated. It's grafted to her neural pathways." "Then she's already dead." Above them, in the vent, something inside Seraphine broke. Not the protocols. Those were still running, still driving her body forward. But something else, some core of self that the protocols couldn't touch. She thought, "I'm going to die tonight. Either Constantine's army kills me, or Theron does, or the nanobots burn through my brain and leave me a vegetable. But maybe I get to choose how. Maybe I get to choose what my death accomplishes." The protocols pulled her forward, away from the laboratory, toward the server room. But Seraphine didn't fight them anymore. She let them pull, let them drive her mechanical body through the vents, because she had a plan. On the walls, Theron was losing, not quickly, but inevitably. The second wave had broken against the defenders like surf against rock, but waves erode rock, given enough time, enough pressure. 200 of Constantine's soldiers dead, but Theron had lost 50 defenders, men and women who'd served him for decades. Gone. Baron Frost appeared beside him, bleeding from a gash across his forehead. "My guard captain is dead," Frost said. "Half my escort is gone. We should retreat to the inner sanctum. If we retreat, they'll overrun the gates. If we stay, they'll kill us all." Theron grabbed Frost by his collar, lifted him off his feet. "Then die standing, or run and die on your knees. Choose." He dropped the Baron. Frost stared at him, then picked up a fallen sword. "I choose standing." The third wave came at dawn, larger, coordinated. Constantine's knights in full-plate armor, shields interlocked, marching in perfect formation. "Testudo," Voss muttered. "Roman tactics. They're going for the gate." "Light them up," Theron ordered. The defenders fired. Rifles, crossbows, anything that could punch through armor. The knights' shields held. They marched through the hail of projectiles like a tank battalion. They reached the gate. Battering ram. Enchanted. Each impact sent shockwaves through the stone. Boom, boom, boom. "Sire," Voss shouted, "the gate won't hold." "I know." Theron leaped from the wall, 30 feet down, landed in front of the gate just as it exploded inward. The knights poured through. Theron met them alone. What happened next would be talked about in vampire circles for the next century. Theron Blackwell, unarmed, facing 200 armored knights. He moved like a scythe through wheat, ripping through armor, snapping necks, tearing limbs from sockets with his bare hands. He was a whirlwind of controlled savagery. Every motion economical, precise, lethal. The knights tried to swarm him, tried to bring him down through sheer numbers. He killed 40 before they retreated, but it cost him. A silver bolt in his shoulder, a blade across his ribs, burns from holy water grenades. He stood in the shattered gateway, bleeding, surrounded by corpses, and looked up at the ridge where Constantine watched. "Is that all you have?" Theron roared. Constantine's laughter echoed across the valley. "Oh, Blackwell, that was just the appetizer." From the forest, more eyes opened. Thousands more. This wasn't a siege, it was an extermination. Seraphine reached the server room. The protocols guided her hands, bypassing the biometric locks. Entering codes she shouldn't know. The door opened. Inside, banks of servers hummed. Cooling fans whirred. The digital heart of Blackwell Citadel's defenses. Protocol Gamma, transmit defensive grid access codes. Seraphine's hands moved to the keyboard, then stopped. Because she'd realized something. The protocols controlled her body, but they didn't control her mind. Not completely. They couldn't stop her from thinking, from planning, from choosing. The defensive grid codes were valuable, but they weren't the real prize. The real prize was Constantine's telepathic network, the hive mind that coordinated his entire army. Seraphine had spent 6 weeks learning about null fields, about how her blood disrupted vampire magic, about amplification and projection. And she'd spent 3 days listening to the most powerful vampires in the world debate strategy. She knew things, dangerous things. Her hands typed. Not the command the protocols wanted, a different command. She accessed the Citadel's medical database, found her own file, found the scans of her blood, the analysis of her null field. And she sent it to the one person who might understand what to do with it, Dr. Graves. Then she collapsed. The protocol screamed, tried to force her hands back to the keyboard, but Seraphine was done obeying. She'd accomplished what she needed to. Now she just had to survive long enough for it to matter. Dr. Graves' tablet pinged. He looked at the screen, saw the medical files, saw the message attached. From Seraphine Rousseau to Dr. Graves. Subject, I'm sorry. Doctor, I know what you did. I know why you did it. I don't forgive you, but I understand. The nanobots in my brain are killing me. I can feel them burning through my neural pathways. I have maybe an hour left before I'm gone. But before I go, I can be useful one more time. My null field disrupts vampire telepathy. Constantine's entire army runs on a hive mind. If you could amplify my field, project it across the battlefield, you could sever his network. Disable 3,000 soldiers in one pulse. The cost would be my life. The strain would kill me instantly. But it would end the war. Tell Theron I'm sorry I wasn't strong enough to fight the protocols. Tell him this is my choice, not Constantine's, not yours. Mine, and tell him to make it count. S. Dr. Graves read the message 3 times. Then he ran. He found Theron in the courtyard, preparing for the 4th wave. "Sire, I need 5 minutes." Theron turned. His face was a mask of blood and ash. "We don't have 5 minutes. It's about Seraphine." That stopped him. Dr. Graves explained, fast, breathless, the message, the plan, the cost. When he finished, Theron was silent. "It would kill her," he said finally. "Yes. There has to be another way." "There isn't. Not in the time we have. Duchess Kira's reinforcements won't arrive in time. The Citadel will fall in 20 minutes. This is the only play left." Theron looked at the ridge, at Constantine's army gathering for the final assault. 3,000 soldiers against his remaining 200. The math was simple. Brutal. Inevitable. "Where is she?" Theron asked. "Server room. I can bring her to the medical bay. Rig the equipment to amplify her field, but I need her conscious. She has to choose this." "She already chose. She sent you the message." "She's 22 years old," Dr. Graves said quietly. "She deserves to hear the reality, to understand what she's offering. Not from a message, from you." Theron closed his eyes. 800 years, countless battles, thousands of decisions, none harder than this. "Bring her to medical," he said. "I'll meet you there." When Seraphine woke, she was strapped to a medical table, not restrained. The straps were loose, just enough to keep her steady. Dr. Graves stood at a console, calibrating equipment, and Theron sat in a chair beside the table, watching her. "You're awake," he said. Seraphine's head felt like it was splitting. The protocols were weakening, burning out. She could feel them dying in her brain like embers turning to ash. "The plan," she managed. "Did you get it?" "Yes." "Will it work?" Dr. Graves answered without turning. "In theory. Your null field, amplified through a blood transfusion circuit, could generate a psychic pulse strong enough to sever Constantine's hive mind across a 5-mile radius. Every soldier linked to his network would collapse. But your body would be the conduit. The power required would burn through your cardiovascular system in seconds. Your heart would stop. Your brain would hemorrhage. Death would be—" "Doctor." Graves' voice cracked. "Instantaneous." Seraphine looked at Theron. His violet eyes were ancient and tired and sad. "There's another option," he said. "What?" "Life tether. An old ritual. Forbidden, mostly. I bind my life force to yours. You stay human, but you share my immortality. If I die, you die. If you die, I die. It's a blood bond. Permanent." "But I could still do the pulse?" "No, the tether would stabilize you, keep you alive, but it would also mean you couldn't be the weapon. You'd just be—" Theron's hands curled into fists. "You'd just be alive, safe, with me, for as long as I exist." The choice crystallized. Safety or sacrifice. Outside, an explosion rocked the Citadel. Screams echoed through the corridors. "How many?" Seraphine asked. "How many what?" "How many will die if I choose safety? How many of your soldiers? How many civilians in the villages below when Constantine wins and marches on?" Theron looked away. "Thousands. And if I do the pulse? The war ends tonight." Seraphine closed her eyes, saw her father's face, saw the auction block, saw Jessica being sold for $3 million, saw the holding cells in Zurich where girls were graded like livestock, saw Isolde, 600 years dead, torn apart on a table. She'd been merchandise her whole life. Maybe it was time to be leverage. "Do the pulse," she said. "Seraphine, I'm not asking permission. I'm telling you what I choose." Theron stood, loomed over her. "You don't have to do this. Neither did you." When you were young. When you crushed Mikhail's peace movement because it was easier to rule through fear, but you did, and you've spent 600 years trying to atone. She met his eyes. This is my atonement. For surviving when so many didn't. For being too afraid to fight the protocols sooner. Let me have this. It's not atonement, Theron said. His voice was rough. It's just death. Then let me choose my death. Let me make it mean something. The silence stretched. Outside the horn blew, the final assault beginning. 5 minutes, Voss's voice crackled over the intercom. They're at the inner walls. Dr. Graves looked at Theron. Sire, we're out of time. Theron reached out, took Seraphine's hand. His skin was cold. I failed Isolde, he said. I won't fail you. You're not failing me. You're letting me win. He brought her hand to his lips, kissed her knuckles. Then win, he said. He stepped back. Dr. Graves moved to the table, started connecting IV lines, heart monitors. The machinery hummed to life. This will hurt, he warned. Everything hurts, Seraphine said. I'm used to it. The process was simple in theory. Theron would open his veins. His ancient blood, 800 years of accumulated power, would flow into Seraphine's system. Her null field would absorb it, refine it, turn it from magic into anti-magic. Then Dr. Graves would trigger the amplification circuit. Seraphine's heart would pump the refined blood through the medical equipment. The equipment would broadcast it as a psychic pulse. One scream, silent, invisible, devastating. And Seraphine would burn out like a star. Ready? Dr. Graves asked. Theron bit his wrist. Blood welled, darker than human blood, almost black. He pressed it to Seraphine's mouth. Drink, he said. She did. The taste was copper and smoke and something else. Something that tasted like time itself, like centuries compressed into liquid. It burned going down. Then Theron bit her neck. Not gentle, not romantic, deep, primal. The kind of bite that meant business. The connection slammed into place. Seraphine gasped. Her back arched off the table. She could feel him. Not just his blood, his mind, his memories. 800 years of life and death and guilt crashing into her consciousness like a tsunami. She saw wars, plagues, empires rising and falling. She saw Isolde, beautiful, laughing, telling Theron about her dreams for peace. She saw Isolde on the table, screaming. Theron too late, always too late. And she saw herself, through his eyes, not as a weapon, not as a tool, as a person, complicated, brave, broken in ways that matched his own breaks. I see you, Seraphine whispered. Theron pulled back from her neck, blood on his lips. And I see you, he said. Now, scream. Dr. Graves hit the switch. The amplification circuit engaged. Seraphine's null field exploded outward. Not sound, not light, just absence. A wave of pure nothing that radiated from the medical bay like a shockwave from ground zero. It passed through the citadel walls, through stone and steel and earth, through the bodies of 3,000 soldiers linked to Constantine's telepathic network. And it severed every connection. On the battlefield, the effect was instantaneous. Knights mid-charge suddenly stopped, looked around in confusion. The voice in their heads, Constantine's voice, always there, always commanding, went silent. Ghouls howled, lost, directionless, without the hive mind telling them where to go, what to kill. Thralls collapsed. The mental link to their masters snapped like cut wire. They clutched their heads, bleeding from eyes and ears. And on the ridge, Constantine Draven screamed. The feedback was catastrophic, 3,000 minds all disconnecting at once. The psychic backlash hit him like a freight train. His eyes burst. Blood poured down his face. He fell from his horse. His guards caught him, dragged him away from the battlefield. But the damage was done. His army, leaderless and confused, began to retreat. Then Duchess Kira's reinforcements arrived from the north. 1,000 fresh soldiers. The rout became a massacre. In the medical bay, alarm screamed. Seraphine's heart had stopped. Dr. Graves started compressions. No pulse. She's flatlined. Theron shoved him aside, bit his wrist again, forced more blood into Seraphine's mouth. Live, he commanded. I order you to live. Nothing. Her skin was gray, her lips blue. Sire, Dr. Graves said gently. She's gone. No. Theron started chest compressions himself, counting. 1, 2, 3, breathe. I don't accept this. Sire, I said no. He compressed, breathed, compressed, breathed. The king of the Eastern Territory, 800 years old. Capable of crushing tanks with his bare hands, begging a 22-year-old girl to come back. Please, he whispered, don't leave me in the noise. 1 minute passed, 2. Then, a flutter, weak, irregular. But there, thump. Dr. Graves checked the monitor. Pulse? I have a pulse. Theron kept compressing, kept breathing for her. Come on, come on. Seraphine's eyes opened, hazel, clear, alive. She coughed, turned her head, vomited blood. Easy, Theron said. He held her steady. Easy. Seraphine's voice was raw. Did it work? Yes? Good. She closed her eyes. Don't you dare, Theron said. Stay with me. Tired. I know, but you stay awake. That's an order. Seraphine's mouth twitched. Almost a smile. Not your subject. You are now. I'm doing the tether, right now. You don't get a choice. Dictator. Absolutely. Dr. Graves prepared the ritual. Silver knife. Ancient words in a language dead for millennia. Theron cut his palm, cut Seraphine's palm, pressed them together. I, Theron Blackwell, bind my life to yours. My breath is your breath. My time is your time. The debt is paid. Golden light. Warm. Soft. It traveled up Seraphine's arm, chasing away the gray in her skin, the blue in her lips. Her breathing stabilized. Her heart found rhythm. And in her hazel eyes, a tiny fleck of violet appeared. I can hear you, she whispered. Theron froze. What? Your heart, I can hear it. Like a drum. The tether went both ways. She wasn't just bound to his life. She was bound to his soul. Theron brought her hand to his lips, kissed the blood on her palm. How does it sound? He asked. Seraphine smiled, weak, exhausted, alive. Lonely, she said, but getting better. 6 months later, Paris, the High Council Hall. Seraphine walked through the marble corridors with her head up. Her left leg didn't ache anymore. The tether had healed it. Knit the bones stronger than they'd ever been. She wore a tailored suit, charcoal gray, expensive. She'd learned to walk in heels, but she still preferred boots. Theron walked beside her, not ahead, not behind, beside. They'd rebuilt the citadel, fortified the defenses, signed the treaties that stripped Constantine of his emergency powers. Constantine himself lay in a medical facility in Prague, comatose, brain damaged from the psychic backlash, but not dead. The High Council had debated for months. Kill him? Keep him alive for intelligence? They'd chosen alive. Seraphine thought it was a mistake, but she didn't have a vote. Yet. The council chamber was packed, every seat filled, vampires from every territory, here to witness the historic session. Duke Alaric presided. He banged the gavel. This emergency session is called to order. First item, ratification of the Vienna Accords. All human trafficking operations in signatory territories will be permanently shut down. Enforcement begins immediately. Murmurs, some approving, some angry. Second item, Alaric continued, a proposal from the Eastern Territory. King Blackwell? Theron stood. I move to create a new council position, human liaison, first of its kind, a seat at this table for a human representative, full voting rights. The chamber erupted. Preposterous! Humans have no place here. This violates tradition. Alaric banged the gavel. Order! King Blackwell, who would you nominate for this position? Seraphine Rousseau. Every eye turned to her. Seraphine stood, walked to the podium, She looked at the faces, vampires who'd lived centuries, who'd seen empires rise and fall, who looked at her like she was a curiosity, an experiment. "I decline," she said. Silence. Theron's expression didn't change, but she felt his surprise through the tether. "You decline?" Alaric repeated. "Yes, I'm not human anymore, not really. The tether changed me, froze me at 22. I'll live as long as King Blackwell lives. Centuries, probably." Seraphine's voice was calm, clear. "I'm not vampire. I'm not human. I'm something else. Something you built when you tried to turn me into a weapon." She looked at the empty chair where Constantine should have been. "You want someone to speak for humanity? Find a human. Someone who still remembers what it's like to be mortal, to fear death, to have children and grow old and leave something behind." "Then what will you do?" Duke Alaric asked. "I'll do what I was built to do. I'll be the weapon, the deterrent, the insurance policy that keeps you honest." She smiled. It was not a warm smile. "Because if any of you try to restart the trafficking, if any of you decide the old ways were better, I'll be there, and you know what I can do." The silence was heavy. Sovereign Amara leaned forward. "Is that a threat?" "It's a promise." Theron stood beside her. "Any questions?" There were none. The session adjourned. Outside Paris at night. Seraphine and Theron walked along the Seine. City lights reflected on dark water. "You didn't tell me you were going to decline," Theron said. "You didn't ask." "I thought you'd want the power, the influence." "I don't want power. I want them afraid. Fear keeps people honest." Seraphine stopped, looked at the river. "Do you regret it? The tether?" "Every day." "Liar." Theron smiled. "Some days." "I regret it too sometimes. I'll never have children. Never grow old. Never," she trailed off. "Never what?" "Never stop being this. The weapon. The silent blood. The thing that ended a war." She looked at him. "Do you think Isolde would have made the same choice?" Theron was quiet for a long time. "No," he said finally. "Isolde believed in hope, in change through peace. She would have found another way. But I didn't." "No, you found the way that worked. That's not better or worse. It's just different." They started walking again. "The silence," Seraphine said. "Is it still there?" "Yes, when you're close, the noise stops." "Good. But you hear something now, don't you? Through the tether." Seraphine nodded. "Echoes. Of everyone we didn't save. Everyone who died in the siege. The 2 guards I killed when the protocols had me." "That's the cost of surviving," Theron said. "You carry the weight of who you couldn't save. It gets heavier every year." "Does it get easier?" "No, you just get stronger." They reached a bridge, stopped in the middle. Seraphine leaned on the railing, looked at her reflection in the water. 22 forever. Young face, old eyes. "They'll call me the Silent Queen," she said. "Won't they?" "Probably." "I hate that. I know. But I'll accept it because it keeps them afraid." Theron put his hand over hers on the railing. His skin was cold. Hers was warmer now. The tether had changed her blood temperature. "We should go," he said. "Long flight back to the Citadel." "You go. I'll walk for a while." "Alone?" "I'm always alone, even when you're standing next to me." She looked at him. "That's what we chose. Both of us. Loneliness, duty, the weight." "Fair trade?" Seraphine thought about it. Thought about Victor selling her, about the auction block, about Jessica sold for $3 million, about Isolde on the table 600 years ago. Thought about the girls who would never be sold now, the laws Theron had pushed through, the systems they'd broken. "Fair trade," she said. Theron kissed her forehead. Not romantic, brotherly. The kiss of a soldier to a comrade before battle. Then he walked away. Seraphine stood on that bridge alone, watching the Seine flow, watching Paris breathe. She was 22 years old. She would always be 22 years old. But she was free, sort of, in the ways that mattered, maybe. She closed her eyes, listened to the city, listened to the heartbeat of the world that used to be noise for Theron. Through the tether she could feel him, miles away already, heading back to the citadel. She could feel the silence he carried, the peace she gave him, and she could feel his guilt. Ancient, heavy, unforgivable, just like hers. "We're quite a pair," she whispered to no one. Then she opened her eyes, turned away from the river, and walked into the Paris night. Not a queen, not a weapon, just Seraphine Rousseau, the girl who survived. Again. 1 week later, Prague Medical Facility, Konstantin Draven's private room. The machines beeped steadily, monitoring vitals, brain activity. The comatose lord lay still, eyes bandaged, breath shallow. The nurse checked the IV, made notes on a chart. She didn't see the monitor flicker, didn't see the brain activity spike, didn't see Konstantin's fingers twitch just once, then still again. But in the darkness behind the bandages, something stirred. A thought. Faint. Distant. Phase 2. The nurse left. The room went dark. And in the silence, Konstantin Draven smiled.